Greetings, friends, and welcome to my guide on Thordan's Rain Extreme. This encounter requires raid awareness and coordination, meeting DPS checks, and the ability to dodge. This encounter also has a hardened rage. I will be going into each of the mechanics as we make our way through the phases. I'm sure there are many other strategies that work just as well, but these are the ones we learned as a group to best suit our playstyle and composition. Alright, let's get started. The first thing I will say about this encounter is that there are a lot of phases and mechanics. While some mechanics being super punishing, there are others that are very forgiving. In addition to this, Thordan Extreme will stack many of these mechanics on top of each other, so having raid awareness and coordination is key. The first phase lasts from 100% to 69%, or roughly 1 minute and 25 seconds. It is possible to push this early. Here is what to watch out for. Ascalone's Might. High damage frontal cleave. Doesn't need to be mitigated, just make sure the tank is topped up. Meteor Rain. Ground AoEs will go out under every player that do extremely high damage. Simply avoid them. For Meteor Rain, you'll want to bait out the AoEs by stacking to the left, right, or behind the boss so you can continue to DPS without having to disengage. Ascalone's Mercy. Large conal AoE that does high damage and knockback. This can be easily avoided by standing in between the blast zones. Dragon's Eye. Self-buff of increased damage. This will summon an eye in the background during later phases. Dragon's Gaze. This will cause fear and put a stack of vulnerability on all affected players. To dodge this, simply look away from the boss and the summon eye in later phases. Lightning Storm. The whole raid will be targeted for a moderate AoE damaging attack. Spread out for this ability and don't stack up. Dragon's Rage. This ability does massive damage that needs to be split. A player will be marked with a pulsating circle with arrows pointing in. The raid should stack up on this person to share the damage. Ancient Quagga. High raid damaging magical ability. Make sure the raid is healthy to survive this attack. Heavenly Heal. Mechanic damaging ability dealing massive damage. This must be mitigated. This phase lasts roughly 1 minute and 25 seconds or to 69%, whichever comes first. Ideally, you'll want to skip the Heavenly Heal in this phase. King Thordan will become untargetable and this will transition you into phase 2. In this phase, the outside ring will now do damage in ticks of 9,999 if touched, and there will also be chains, fire AoEs, towers, and dive bombs. If any mechanics are failed or anyone dies, the Knight's limit break bar will fill more quickly, resulting in more damage for the ultimate end attack. Initially, you'll want to stack in the middle, then once chains appear, spread out to break them. During this time, towers will spawn. At least one person must stand in them or they will explode, dealing moderate raid damage and putting a nasty paralysis debuff on the entire raid. If a ground AoE covers the tower, there is enough time to let the AoE resolve, then grab the tower. After this, a knight will spawn in the middle of the room and begin to cast Sacred Cross. You must DPS him as much as possible. The amount of damage you deal to him will determine how much damage Sacred Cross will do to the raid. As long as you get him to about 50%, you should be okay. It is pretty forgiving. If DPS is low, you can shield before the damage. Medica 2 is also good here to top people up after the attack. About 3/4 of the way through the cast, 3 more knights will spawn on the outside of the arena in a Y formation. These knights will dive straight through, dealing moderate damage and causing knockback. To dodge these, you can either look for the 2 closest, then move to the left or right, or you can do it the easy way and trust in the triangle. There are these little happy triangle doodads all over the floor towards the edge of the arena. As long as you trust in the triangle, you will be safe every time. After dive bombs, this will transition you into Phase 3. 2 knights will spawn and will need to be picked up by both tanks and kept apart from each other. If they are too close, they will tether, making them unkillable. They will also cast Divine Right, self-buff of either damage increase or defense increase. One knight will get damage and the other will get defense. Attack the one with damage increase. Shortly after this, they will both cast Holy Blade Dance, mechanic damaging ability. This must be mitigated. It is recommended for tanks to use either Holmgang, Hollowed Ground, or Living Dead for the first Blade Dance if you are tanking the knight with increased damage. Ideally, you want to kill that knight before another Divine Right is casted. After a short amount of time, the knights will then cast Skyward Leap. This ability will put a blue doodad over 3 raid members. Skyward Leap does moderate raid damage based on the location of the target. The players with the blue doodads need to get far away from the group to weaken the damage on the other raid members. Those players should be shielded or healed as well. Following this, the knights will do a tank cleave called Heavenly Slash. This combined with Skyward Leap can be very healing intensive, so be prepared. The knights will then cast a moderate damaging raid ability called Holiest of Holy. This is followed by another Blade Dance, Divine Right if they are both still alive, then Holiest of Holy. Once both knights are dead, Phase 4 will begin. In this phase, there will be a lot of ground AoEs, tethers, ice circles, and a DPS check. Start this phase off by stacking in the middle. 3 knights will spawn and tether themselves to players. The other 5 players will get targeted with ice circles. Stay in the middle to bait out the ground AoEs that spawn here as well. The raid should split into 2 groups, tethered players and ice players. One group goes north and the other south. The tethered players will get charged in a line AoE. The damage is higher the closer that player is to the tethered knight. It doesn't matter if the knight crosses paths with another, just be sure to run all tethers to the edge along with the ice AoEs on the opposite side. Immediately following the tether and ice damage, run back to the center and align yourself so you will be knocked away from the ice AoEs. The direction of the knockback is based on the center of the room, so you may have to run kinda far. Following this, a meteor circle will spawn in the middle of the room along with comet circles around it. The goal here is to DPS all of the comet circles, then the middle meteor circle, before the comets or meteor crashes down on the arena. During this time, there will be a lot of ground AoEs to dodge and meteor markers placed over players' heads. Simply dodge the ground AoEs. If you get hit, it will stun you, which will likely result in another hit. The meteor markers are way more intimidating than they look. Simply stand still and take the hits. The meteors will do small AoE damage around the targeted players, so try not to hit others. During this phase, if DPS is low or you had some unfortunate deaths in previous phases, it is safe to let one of the comet circles explode to focus more DPS on the meteor circle. If you do this though, make sure the raid is topped. Once all circles have been destroyed, the knights will form around you and cast Ultimate End. This ability's damage is based on the amount of LB bar the knights have accumulated. This should be mitigated with shields. After this, you will transition into Phase 5. Upon entering this phase, King Thordan will become targetable once again in the north area of the room. In this half of the fight, we move Thordan around based on the eye's position in the background for certain phases. In this phase, when he casts Dragon's Eye for the first time, it will summon a large eye in the background behind him. When he casts it again, the eye will move to a random location. We will move him to this location when we see where the eye spawns. In this phase, he will cast Knights of the Round. This will summon untargetable knights dictating mechanics. The knights are not random and are predetermined for each new phase. Shortly after, Thordan will do Ascalon's Might, followed by a healer getting targeted by Spear of the Fury. In the center of the room, a knight will begin to channel a spear attack that does massive damage and inflicts infirmity. A green doodad will go over a healer's head. Shortly after, that healer will be stunned. This must be split with the party in a line formation, with the off-tank first in the line, the party in the middle, then the healer last. The off-tank should use a cooldown. This attack hits extremely hard. If any player dies, the knight will wipe the raid. Heavenly Heal will be next, so make sure to top up the tank and worry about the party after the infirmity debuffs drop. Dragon's Gaze will follow shortly after, so look away. Then the last ability he will cast in this phase is Ancient Quagga. After Ancient Quagga, he will cast Dragon's Eye again. Move the boss to the new eye location. Shortly after, he will cast Knights of the Round, and this will take you into Phase 6. In this phase, Knights of the Round will be Ground AoEs, Towers, Pulsating AoEs, and Knockback, in addition to Ascalon's Might, Dragon's Gaze, and Dragon Rage. So Towers will spawn and Dragon's Gaze will go out. Ground AoEs will follow. Sometimes the ground AoEs make it difficult to grab towers. Try your best to grab them, and if you have to choose between getting hit with a ground AoE while trying to grab a tower versus not grabbing it and dodging the AoE, always grab the tower. The AoE should only hit for like 8k, and taking 8k is better than having a tower explode and giving the raid paralysis. I have never been in a situation to where I had to get hit by both, and I think there is always time to dodge the AoE and get the tower, but depending on connection issues, this may not always be the case. After towers are gotten, the pulsating AoEs will go out under random players, so try to keep the center clear if possible. Dodge these as normal. Immediately following the pulsating AoEs, Thordan will cast Dragon's Rage. It is very critical that the entire raid stacks in the direct center for the knockback that follows. This way, the entire party will be knocked back in the same direction and already be stacked for Dragon's Rage. Following this, Thordan will auto-attack and then cleave, so be sure to have the tank topped up and the boss faced away from the raid. Immediately following Ascalon's Might, he will cast Dragon's Eye again. In this phase, we do not move him to the eye because he does not cast Gaze. Instead, we move him to make dive bombs easy to avoid. The knights in this phase will do the following: Lightning Storm, Blue Doodad, Tether, and Dive Bomb, in addition to Thordan's Ascalon's Might, Heavenly Heal, and Dragon's Rage. So after Thordan casts Dragon's Eye, he will cast Knights of the Round. This is where you need to look to where the dive bomb is coming from. Align yourself up parallel and face him that direction to where the dive bomb will go. Ideally, you want to split the raid in two. The people with the tether and the blue doodad go on the opposite side of the party, while the rest of the party stack either behind or on Thordan to split the Dragon Rage's damage. However, you can also put the blue and the tether on the same side as the party. but just be sure to be very far away. The goal here is to not hit other raid members with the tether and be as far away as possible with the blue doodad, so there are many ways to handle this mechanic. Immediately following Dragon's Rage, he will cast Heavenly Heal, then Dragon's Eye. Move Thordan to the new eye location and remain stacked behind him for the upcoming mechanics. The knights in this phase are Meteors, Chains, Fire AoEs, Ice Circles. Thordan will still cast Dragon's Gaze, Ancient Quagga, Ascalon's Mercy, and Heavenly Heal. Okay, so simultaneously, Fire AoEs, Meteors, Chains, Ice AoEs, and Dragon's Gaze will all happen at once, so simply run away from the boss. When doing this, make sure to break chains and not clip anyone with Meteors or Ice AoE. Thordan will then do Ascalon's Might, so get in safe spots in between cleaves. Following this, he will cast Ancient Quagga, so make sure the party is topped up. Then comes Heavenly Heal, followed by another Ancient Quagga. Following Ancient Quagga, Thordan will cast Dragon's Eye, then Knights of the Round. Phase 9 is mostly just massive raid AoE damage, so be sure to have everyone topped up at all times. We did not get to see very much of this phase because in most of our pulls, Thordan is already dead here. However, if DPS is low, after some raid AoE damage, the Sacred Cross Knight will spawn in the middle of the room and tether itself to Thordan, making Thordan invulnerable to damage. Immediately following this will be massive AoE damage, and you must DPS the Knight in the middle of the room to break the tether. It is recommended to use melee LB on the Knight because the DPS check is rather tight here. Ideally, you want Thordan dead before he is tethered to the Knight, but if you make it this far and survive, Thordan will let you DPS him for a moment before enraging and casting Quagga again, wiping the raid. Well guys, that's all I got. I hope this guide was helpful and will lead to some sweet first clears. Good luck guys.